Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo, not the video, for the 10th of March here in 2022. And as the market closes, we have a trend day to the downside, additional bearish activity in the equity futures, but also in crude oil, which is $/CL, but also in the bond market, which is TLT. So it's a sell swing across the board, except for a little bit of upside action in gold. In our sectors, just looking at the market as we close, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 sectors just about are in the positive today, and the weakest sector is technology. And that's going to translate in the weakest of our equity futures. That's the Nasdaq. So let's start right there. On the S&P, we still continue this downtrend, lower lows and lower highs, falling moving averages, and that does set us on the bear course of the market. Typically short selling, pullbacks, rallies, or retracements. That is the opposite of the famous or infamous buy the dip. And that's just on the other way down. So buy the dip does not work permanently. Work for a while, not permanently. And that's what we're dealing with in the market, is the new paradigm of 2022. And that's when geopolitics, inflation, Federal Reserve, all other components are really sending a bearish, bigger picture. And that is translating to the downside action of the equity market. And it's mainly coming off or affecting the Nasdaq and the technology stocks. And that's in the large part because of this one thing amongst everything in the grand scheme of things. And that's TNX. What is TNX? The 10-year Treasury Note Yield. And as we like to highlight, 20 does not mean 20% on the yield. That would be magnificent. Would not happen. But it's 2%. So 2% right here, 1.5%, and then beneath that is 1%. So on the bigger picture, interest rates have been on the rise, at least in treasuries, since the latter part of the middle part of 2021. So as yields go up, rates go up, the cost to borrow capital, the cost to purchase or to have loans, that's going to go up, and that's going to crimp corporate earnings and anything in general. Now, a lot of technology stocks do rely on big loans to produce their products, hire staff, and build plants. Corporations build their services and their employees and all the things that goes into technology. And they don't want higher interest rates. So that's why we are seeing, in part, amongst all the other headline news, technology stocks. This is the XLK. But beyond that, we can look at the QQQ, which is our tradable ETF. And that is at the lows as well. So it doesn't look like a lot, but that QQQ is off in terms of percent functions about 22%. And that's from the high that was made around November to the current lows, 22%. If you are keeping up at home, that defines a bear market. Technology stocks in general are in a bear market. That includes stocks like Facebook. We can take a look at some of the others. Amazon is in the news. Amazon is in the highlight, especially for today's session. And that's because they had a dividend, or they had a stock split, and they're announcing corporate share buybacks. They announced that in their prior earnings report, but nonetheless, the board voted, and they are going to split the stock. So gone will be the days of the 3400 or the 3300. Or the price being above 3,000. That'll be split quite a bit. And not dissimilar to what happened in Apple, which split from about 700 per share not super long ago, a few years at that. And that just makes the stock a little more tradable and a little more easy to get those intraday positions, or at least for the average or regular retail trader. Probably won't trade a stock, and Google is on the same logic as it announced a split as well. And that's from the 3,000 per share level. That'll be split too. So these are things to watch, keep an eye on as these stocks do. Well, this market cap will not change. It's just the number of shares outstanding and, of course, the price of each of those shares. Nevertheless, Google is on the downside for the trend. We just saw Amazon, although it's getting a news bounce. Let's go beyond that and take a look specifically at our Visualize. In the Visualize tab, we see you, Amazon. It's about the only spot that's green, except for energy and some other sectors. So energy's up. Again, there's the energy sector, not a big portion of market cap. In fact, the entire energy sector in the S&P 500 would fit really nicely within the market cap of Amazon. And so is the monsters of tech. But in the S&P 100, same logic. And focusing on the Nasdaq, there you are, Amazon. We see you as a bright green spot amongst all the other red in technology. Again, Nasdaq, XLK, and of course the Qs. That's the main idea for today's video, today's session as we go into March. But so much is playing out. And watching those levels on the downside, there's the Dow mini futures. The Russell is a small cap index, which has had its own consolidation and break. So all the indexes are downtrending. But so is the bond market. TLT, which is the 10-year or the treasuries, the ETF that has the little bit longer dated treasuries ETF, and that would be corresponding a little bit to ZB. ZB is the 30-year treasury bond. ZN is the 10-year treasury note. And if you want to trade that similarly, IEF would be a good ETF to think about. But otherwise, TLT is something I will trade and others in terms of liquidity and the familiarity with the product. So TLT. Nonetheless, it's making a new 52-week low in the context of a downtrend. Remember, bond price is going down at the exact same time for the exact same reason that treasury rates, TNX, are going up. So these are focal points in how it affects specific sectors in the broader market. So crude oil did get the pullback. That is on the news of Ukraine and Russia and other inflation or inflationary concerns. As that pulled strongly back, what goes up tends to come down, but it can be painful on the short side until it does come down. Nevertheless, crude oil, that's a big headline that's taking place this week, that spiked up to just about 130 per barrel and is all the way back to 105. Gold has a similar type of, I might call it popcorn up, but it's not getting that same type of pullback or route that crude oil is. And a few other quick notes. VIX, that is also coming down from its recent high. And once again, the bond market's pushing off to lows. Within that context, just a quick note. How many stocks are making new 52-week lows and where are they? This is some of the names in the S&P 500 that are making those lows. There are 13 of them. And I sort them by market cap. So Citigroup, US Bancorp, Gilead, that's not crude oil, that's Colgate-Palmolive, and down the list. Clorox is actually making new lows. On the other hand, stocks that are making new 52-week highs are some of the names we've seen continue to push these highs. And they include Chevron, Occidental, and a few others. Not a lot, only 4. And we'll finish up with looking at a couple of those. There is CVX. Chevron Texaco is out there with a high. Gas prices and how they are at the pump and how quickly the gas prices across the country have risen sharply. That is in the news. Probably some of your Facebook feeds as well. But anyway, gas prices are going up. And stocks that trade within that sector and the energy sector in general are getting a boost. It's not all bad. It's bearish for the general economy, but nonetheless, some of the stocks are benefiting from that rise. And that includes, in general, the energy sector. And finally, on the other hand, a few names to pinpoint making new 52-week lows and continuing the downtrend. Citigroup, US Bancorp, that's just a trading range. Gilead Sciences, that's a rough downtrend. But also Colgate-Palmolive, just a trading range. And some of the others. There's Clorox. Not to be outdone, there's Clorox. Not a stock that I would expect that's going to be making down these lows. When if I think about a bear market or a downtrend in the stock market, I am certainly not thinking about Clorox off at new lows, but nonetheless, there trades that stock at those lows. So always be careful, always be safe. Keep your risk first. Your spreads, any option positions you have. Careful, safety, protection, hedge. This is Corey Rosenblum with tonight's Theo video update for March 10th, 2022.